The name is Joey, and this is my son Jeff, the man introduced himself and his son. My name is Mac, and this is my Uncle Jim, and that's Jack. I introduced myself, Jim and Jack. So you're the free people that type articles about your weird experiences? Joey asked. I'm afraid you are correct, I replied. There is a better question. Why are we here? Jack asked. Because my father believes that Matt and his son Tom are back. Jeff replied. He's right, Jack said. And he used that device he used on you guys and your father, so that would make you think through different disturbing versions of the movies on us, Jim explained. Hey, a familiar British voice yelled out. Where are we? The voice yelled in anger. Who was that? Jeff asked. We walked into the room and we find Oliver, Samantha, and her brothers and sister in a herd of zombies. Oliver, how? I asked. Who are you? Oliver asked. Well, this is my wife and her siblings are alive? Oliver continued to question us. How did Oliver and the other villains in the game manage to get into our world? Jim asked. I may have a theory, Joey said. I believe that one of the upgrades Matt used on the machines could pull characters from specific place media, whether it be video game, cartridge, DVD, or heck, even a comic book or a novel, Joey explained. But how did you manage to get the characters, including the zombies, into your basement without getting killed? I asked. Because this isn't actually a basement. It's actually an abandoned prison, Jeff replied. But we even built protective fields to keep them from getting out, Joey said. I also tried to reach both Toby Edwards and Mark Lockie to see if they'll be coming, Joey continued. But they're also supposed to be bringing in lost Tim Burton movies and Marvel comics too, Joey continued more. And it looks like there's a Tim Burton fan here, a voice called out. Hi, I'm Mac, and this is Jim and Jack. I introduced myself and Jim and Jack. Nice to meet you all. I'm Toby Edwards, Toby introduced himself. Did you bring your Tim Burton movies? Joey asked. I sure did, Toby replied. Now let's see, we have 3 Tim Burton movies. We should get ready to travel, Joey said. We put the 3 Tim Burton movies in a slot, and then we get inside the teleportation. Computer, Joey yelled out. Teleport us to how they died. A Nightmare Before Christmas backstory, Joey said, and the next thing we knew, we must have been teleported into the movie because they were in the suburban neighborhood, just like in a Tim Burton movie. Welcome everyone to your normal Tim Burton setting, Toby said. That being Serbia. Toby continued. A person came out of home. He was male, tall, and skinny and had a dog. Be careful while I'm gone, Zero. And don't bite any electric wires while I'm gone, the person said. That's Jack and Zero, Toby told Jack and walked towards where he had waved to the 3 kids. Hello, fellow kids. You children going to school today? The person asked. Yes, we are, Jack, one of the kids answered. Lock, shock, and barrel, Jeff thought, as Jack had walked to work. He was working for an assistant for the mayor. The mayor had kind of asked a task for him, being that the town should host a Halloween party for this Halloween. He would later be the mayor of the Halloween town, Joey said. He then jumped to a few hours later, when Jack was walking home. He saw the police lines at the house, and saw that there must be an accident. So when we got home to watch the news, reports said that someone poisoned his water, and that he drunk and died. They said that the man got poisoned named he was Frankenstein. He was a scientist who did experiments, and the person who made Sally in Nightmare Before Christmas. The death actually made sense, seeing that Sally was usually poisoned Frankenstein in the movie. As the movie went on, Zero mistakes a treat for the electric wire, so he bit on the electric fence. Zero! Jack yelled, as he found Zero dead on the ground. I assume Zero's death made sense in the movie. He has fog around him and a glowing nose, Toby thought. As it later goes on, it flashes to morning with Jack upset that Zero died, and he had some morning coffee. The next day, as 2 days before Halloween, something else strange happened. A newspaper read that a person was left to die in a sack of bugs. Oogie Boogie? I asked. Yes, Toby replied, as Jack got ready to work as he saw his neighbor, which was Sally. The neighbor was even antisocial, like Sally was in the original, so it could be Sally. As Jack walked into work, he saw the three kids from earlier picking out their costumes. The boy with red hair picked a devil costume, the little girl picked out a witch costume, and the other boy picked out a skeleton costume. "Oh, so here they are. Look, lock, shock, and barrel," Jim said, as Jack walked over to his office, where he works at his job. He then came up with a costume contest for the Halloween event that the town was having, but something else happened, that the mayor was murdered, but no one could find any evidence of his murder, but they believed that someone made his head spin. What they mean is by taking his head spin, someone and snapped his neck. That made sense as well, as his head spins the nightmare before Christmas. So why are there so many deaths going on recently? Jack whispered himself in confusion. 2 days later, it was Halloween and there were 2 more deaths. This time it was Shock and Barrel. The report said that Shock was accused of witchcraft, which led to a death penalty. As for Barrel, someone kidnapped him and drowned him underwater. "They were only kids," Jack Skellington said. "I'm sorry for those 3 kids that died in the news," Jack's neighbor said. "It's okay, Sally. It wasn't your fault," Jack said with tears. Fast forward to the month of January, and there is another death. This time it was Locke. Reporters said that he froze to death in the snow. "He was only a kid," Jack said in tears. Then all of a sudden, Jack Skellington smells smoke and goes outside to see that Sally his house was on fire. He decides to go in the house to save Sally. But once he saved Sally, he didn't make it out of the house and got burned to death. "Jack, I'm sorry," Sally said in tears. As the firefighters went investigating, found out there was a spark in the basement that caused the house to burn down. And as she realized Jack was gone, she sang a little reprise of her song left in the original movie. But then Sally passed out fell on the cold ground hard and was later pronounced dead. I think the reason of her death was a heart attack. But however, she was hopeless romantic. Then a portal appears. "Okay, let's walk through it," Joey said. And then we walked into the portal, and it ended up in a Gothic Victorian England, possibly in the 1980s or 1800s. "We must be in the story behind Emily Evergott, a Tim Burton's Corpse Bride backstory," Toby said. We were in the Evergott's house when we saw a baby girl crawling around. She was normal Tim Burton style when it came to his animated projects. "Emily?" I asked. "Yes," Toby replied. "Oh, Emily, I believe you will grow up to be a great daughter," her mom said. "Madeleine Evergott is Emily's mother?" I asked in pure confusion. "Just watch," Toby said. "Oh, don't worry, she will. Her father, Phineas Evergott said in a grumpy tone of voice, like he usually spoke in the original. It then later cuts to Emily as 18 years old, when she was old enough to marry someone. "Emily, me and your father have to talk to you about something," her mother told her. She was going to walk to her room with her mother and father to talk to her about that she passed a room that had a baby sleeping in the crib. Must be Victoria, I thought to myself. They talked about her marriage and how it worked, but later in the film, it then cuts to when she was walking in the Gothic Victorian England village. There was a person in the shadows, watching her walk as she smiled sinisterly. Lord Barkus, I thought. He would walk up to Emily and introduce himself. "Hello, my name is Barkus Burton, and you look beautiful," he said. "Oh, thank you. My name is Emily Evergott." Emily introduced herself. "I believe I want to marry you, Emily," Barkus said to Emily. "You seem nice, and I want to do the same," Emily replied. But as Emily introduced himself and asked for approval, they disapproval and demanded him to leave. A few months later, when Emily was walking through the same Gothic Victorian town like she did early in the movie, she was going to meet up with Barkus for a plan to get secretly married. She also had a box in her mother's wedding dress, the family jewels, and the statue of gold. The place they were going to get married was next to the graveyard by an old oak tree that was in the dark, foggy night at the quarter of the tree. Those stuff that they mentioned the place they were going to get married was mentioned in the song Remains of the Day, sung by the character Bone Jangles in the original movie, I thought to myself. She waited until all of a sudden Lord Barkis in the shadow snuck up behind Emily and murdered her by impaling her with the sword. I thought you would be smarter than this, Lord Barkis said in a sinister tone. He then buried her near the tree and she was killed at. And then another portal appeared. That's our cue to leave, Joey said. Then, we walked through the portal and ended up in a different suburban neighborhood. We're in the final Tim Burton movie I bought over, Toby said. The Burtonverse, Toby continued. We went through most of the events of the Frankenweenie till the part where Victor Frankenstein was pretty miserable. Seeing his dog Sparky died, he was so miserable till one day his parents got him a new dog and named him Scraps. Wait, isn't that Victor Van Door's dog from Corpse Bride? I wondered to myself. If that's the case, then that's one theory that Frankenweenie and Corpse Bride and The Nightmare Before Christmas being in the same universe could be true. My thoughts continued. It then cuts us to 7 years later, and Scraps dies of old age. This makes Victor to get so miserable again. He runs away and wanders off far until he was taken to the Vandorfs, and then it cuts to when he's older and after the events of Corpse Bride, when he married Victoria in the movie. They were happy in life, but Victor had a stroke, leading them to die. But when he died, he ended up in a place called Halloween Town, and he had renamed himself Jack Skellington. He even reunited with his beloved Sparky and named him Zero. And then we saw a portal we entered, though. It found themselves back in what seems to be Joey's basement. When we came back from discovering something odd in the prison, we had found that Lord Barkis in a cell right across from Oliver. How? Jeff asked. We didn't even send them here, Jeff continued. Then we heard knocking at the door. Hello? Anyone home? I got your message about Marvel Comics' The Last Superhero, voice said outside. I'll be there, Joey said, as he walked over to the door and opened it. Welcome, Mark Lockie, Toby said. Come on in, Toby continued. We would then talk for a little bit before we heard the alarms going off. We went over there to fix it. We were then sucked into another portal. While we were in the portal, we had a talk. Okay, I have a feeling Matt could be making contact with our machines. It could be making us to go to disturbing versions of movies of any kind, Joey said. Then we arrived at Rydell High. Oh my God, Joey said. What is it, Dad? Jeff asked. We're in the movie Grease, Joey replied.